This is the cost of production part of the microeconomics course, and we're going to be talking about total cost, fixed cost, and variable cost. These are referred to as total costs, and then we're going to be dealing with per unit costs: average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost. Marginal cost probably being the most important per unit cost in microeconomics. So uh, the first equation, TC, is equal to FC plus VC. Total cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. Uh, Sometimes fixed cost is identified as total fixed cost. And sometimes variable cost is identified as TVC, total variable cost. But it all means the same: fixed cost, variable cost. So what is this thing? No idea. So what is fixed cost? Well, fixed cost is identified in this way. If production, or QS, increases, fixed cost does not change. And if production, QS, decreases, fixed cost does not change. In other words, uh, fixed costs are not dependent on production. They remain fixed, they remain constant at any level of production. Now, some examples of fixed cost. One example would be paying 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 banks interest payments and retiring some of the principal of the loan. I mean, if you're a company and you've borrowed money from a bank and you have to pay an interest payment on this loan, if you have to retire part of the principal of the loan, well, that amount of money is going to be constant, right? Month by month by month. So regardless of your production, you still have to pay this cost, this interest payment, this retirement of the principal of the loan. All right? I mean, obviously, you cannot tell the banker, look, I didn't produce anything this month, therefore I don't owe you any money. That's just ludicrous. Um, Another example would be uh, you, the company, renting renting well, space for your office, for your production facilities. So regardless of your production, whether it's 0 or 1 unit or 100,000 units or whatever, you're you have to pay the same amount of rent. And if you make 0 units, if you don't manufacture anything, right? Well, you cannot possibly go to your landlord and say, well, this month I didn't produce anything, therefore I don't owe you any money. So again, fixed cost is not linked to, is not dependent on the amount of production. Variable cost. So how do we characterize variable cost? Well, unlike fixed cost, variable cost is indeed dependent on the level of production. So if production increases, well, then variable costs are going to go up. And if production decreases, then variable costs are going to go down. I guess the best way to move forward with this is to give you some examples of variable cost. One major, if not the major, element of variable cost is or are labor costs. Yeah. So if you produce more, you'll be hiring more workers or asking workers to work more hours. Well, that increases cost of production. And if you're producing fewer goods, then you will ask labor to work fewer hours. You might even have to fire some workers. Well, this obviously means lower labor costs, lower variable costs. So normally, labor costs are part of VC, variable costs. Another example of variable costs is natural resources like raw materials, for instance. Yeah, if you work more, if you produce more, you'll be utilizing more raw materials, so that will increase your production costs, and that's regarded as a variable cost. Okay, now per unit costs, and piecemeal, I'll be going through average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost. Okay, first one, average fixed cost equation, fixed cost divided by quantity. So if we have total fixed cost of $100,000 and if we produce 1 unit, then AFC is going to be $100,000. If, however, we have 100,000 units, the 1 here refers to units also, right? So if fixed costs are $100,000, and if the company produces 100,000 units, then AFC is going to be $1. And now for a graph, graphing the AFC curve, the average fixed cost curve. So we have our firm, okay? So here we have average fixed cost, dollar, divided by quantity. And here we have quantity in units. This is on the y-axis we have a monetary value, a per unit monetary value. So how will the AFC curve look like? Well, the AFC curve would look like this. Average fixed cost curve. Whoops. Curve, like that, yeah? The more you produce, the lower will be average fixed cost. Again, the more you produce, going this way, the lower will be average fixed cost. Will the average fixed cost ever reach 0? No. Will average fixed cost ever be negative? Absolutely not. And all along this average fixed cost curve, we can identify the 4 production stages. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Remember the 4 production stages? You should. Average variable cost. Variable cost divided by Q, or total variable costs divided by Q. Same thing. Once again, a diagram. Here's our firm again. Average variable cost, dollar divided by Q. It's a per unit value. Here we have quantity, 0 to infinity. And what is the shape of the average variable cost curve? It's U-shaped. It looks like this. Average variable cost curve, right? Using the language of production, this would be the first stage of production. This would be the second stage of production, followed by, as we go up, third production stage and the fourth production stage. And this would obviously be the point of inflection. That's where AVC is at its lowest point. All right, I'll have a lot more to say about this later on. This is where the mismatch starts to occur. This is where the law of diminishing average returns, the law of diminishing marginal returns kicks in. This obviously separates the first two production stages. Now, we don't normally show production stage 3. We don't normally show production stage 4 because firms don't produce in the third or fourth production stage. That's just not economically sane. Average total cost. There are two equations. Average total cost is total cost divided by quantity, or if we have already calculated AFC and AVC, then we can calculate ATC by adding AFC to AVC. Obviously, this would give us the exact same answer. All right, another diagram, our firm. This is average total cost, dollars divided by quantity. This is quantity. And what is the shape of average total cost? It looks like this. Average total cost curve. Let me switch colors. And once again, we have production stage 1, production stage 2, and then 3 and 4 we don't show, but they're there. And of course, this is the lowest value of ATC. I'll have a lot more to say about it later on. This is where the mismatch starts to occur. The mismatch between K and L. All right. Marginal cost, probably the most important per unit cost. So here, what we're calculating is, well, there are two equations here, right? First one, change in total cost divided by the change in quantity produced. So MC is equal to delta TC divided by delta quantity. Another way put, TC2 minus TC1 divided by Q2 minus Q1 over and over and over again. All right. So basically, what you're trying to calculate is the added cost of producing one extra unit. The added cost of having produced the extra unit. So you're really measuring the addition of a variable cost, because fixed costs do not change, do they? All right, which brings us to the next definition. Marginal cost is equal to the change in variable cost divided by the change in the quantity produced. So MC is equal to delta VC divided by delta Q. VC2 minus VC1 divided by Q2 minus Q1. And you do this over and over and over again. Now, why do these equations, why are they identical? They're identical because fixed costs are fixed. They're constant. They don't change, do they? So we don't have to consider total cost. All we need to do is consider the change in variable costs. A diagram again. Our firm. Okay. So here we have marginal cost. It's a per unit cost. Here we have quantity, and what is the shape of the marginal cost curve? The shape is, you got it, it looks like this. It's U-shaped. We say it's U-shaped. Yeah. So if we were to identify the production stages, this is the first one, and this is the second one. 3 and 4 would be up here somewhere. We just don't show it because it's not necessary, because in efficient firms we just don't produce along the third or fourth production stages. And obviously this is where the mismatch starts to occur, right? The mismatch, too much of the variable input and not enough of the fixed input. Okay, so that's the shape of the marginal cost curve. Okay, now the next step, we're going to take all of the per unit costs. Well, all of them, other than AFC. Yeah, we rarely examine, we rarely utilize AFC. AFC is very misleading. It's very tricky. So normally in cost analysis, we don't use AFC. We tend to use fixed costs. Okay, so per unit costing on the y-axis right there, and quantity on the x-axis, 0. So now the 3 per unit costs. So here's the first one, average total cost curve. Here's the second one, which is right below ATC, right? AVC has to be below ATC because the difference between ATC and AVC is AFC. And the marginal cost curve. So how do we show the marginal cost curve? Here we have the lowest level of ATC, and here we have the lowest level of AVC. So how do we draw the marginal cost curve? We draw it like this. The marginal cost curve has 2 very interesting characteristics. It intersects AVC at its lowest point, right here, and it intersects, the marginal cost curve intersects ATC at its lowest point. Yeah, when we are, let me use green. Yeah, when we will be dealing with very shortly with pure competition, we will identify this as the shutdown point, and we're going to identify this point as the liquidation point. All right, so shutdown, that's the intersection between marginal cost and AVC, and right here, that's the liquidation point. That's the interest. It's identified by the intersection of marginal cost and the average total cost curve. Okay, so in order for you to be able to complete the second weekly assignment, what I am calling the beta assignment, you're going to have to be able to calculate profit. So my chosen designation for profit is going to be the pi label, right? Pi means profit if it's a positive number, and a loss if it's a negative number. So what is profit? Well, profit or loss is equal to TR minus TC. Okay? And, well, what is TR? Well, TR in turn is what? It's P times Q. That's TR. And TC. Well, what is TC? Well, there are a couple of possibilities, if not more, right? TC can be stated as average total cost times quantity, and TC can also be stated in total cost form as FC plus VC. We've already seen this one, right? Okay, so you're going to need this to be able to do the calculations on the beta assignment. In order to complete the beta assignment, you will also need to understand the notion of marginal revenue. So what is marginal revenue? It's the change in TR divided by the change in Q. Another way put, TR2 minus TR1 divided by Q2 minus Q1. What marginal revenue calculates is the added total revenue from having produced and sold the extra unit. Marginal revenue. We produced it, we produced an extra unit, we have sold it. How much extra money has this contributed to total revenues? That's the notion of marginal revenue. Now, go to BCom for weekly assignment beta, and when you're posting your email, please, once again, last name. Let's say my last name is Mainolfi. Actually, that was my mother's maiden name. Followed by course code. So what is our course code? It's Econ 120. Followed by the name or title of the assignment, which is beta. Last name, course code, beta. Thank you for your collaboration, and if you don't follow these instructions, I do take points away for slowing me down.